Vertical Raise is the premier online donation platform, utilizing email, text messaging, and social media campaigns to exponentially increase the reach of your fundraiser. With detailed tracking and the complete personalization of every page, Vertical Raise provides an easy system that works. Our experienced representatives have made us the most effective fundraising platform available. We look forward to the opportunity in helping elevate your program to the next level and reaching your goals. Visit online or call today.
This is a Queen Bee Radio High School sports presentation.
Welcome to another edition of the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup, presented by Vertical Raise Milwaukee. We'll call this Championship Week with the championships that we had for Galena Pirates Volleyball and the high school football state championships that we have on the Wisconsin side. And we'll talk about Galena Volleyball first, as the Galena Pirates have won their first state championship in girls volleyball history. And the now Galena truther, Steve Prestegard, joining us to chat about it, as you were on the broadcast for pretty much most of their postseason run. But at the state tournament, Steve, they defeated Effingham St. Anthony in 2 sets, 25-18, 25-18, and then defeated Hartsburg Emden 25-23 and 25-16 to bring home the gold for the Galena Pirates volleyball team, their first ever state championship, like we said. And talk about the two matchups at state, Steve, because, this has been a team that, especially in girls basketball, this is, somewhat familiar territory as far as being able to play down there, but it seemed like that the coaching staff was kind of relying on the experience that those girls have had at state previously in other sports to get down there and get the job done.
Yeah, it did make, and obviously I think it did make a difference because as usually happens, everybody gets off on to the start kind of jittery, and that was certainly the case. It was a succession of side outs in the first set, most of the first set anyway, against Effingham St. Anthony. But actually in both matches, and truth be told, pretty much going all the way back to the sectional, all the matches were kind of similar in the sense that they were pretty close in the first set. Galena was able to finish things off, and then like a third of the way or halfway into the second set, all of a sudden it's like, you know what, we're done playing with you. And basically Galena just stomped on the gas pedal and took charge. That was particularly the case, kind of interestingly, on Saturday in the championship match, where all of a sudden you look up and they're 5 points away from winning, and they just finished it off right there. They were surprisingly dominant, I thought, in the crazy to think about this, that the regional final, they lost the first set to Durant. And from that point on, they never lost another set in the entire postseason through 2 sectional matches, including one against the number 1 ranked team in Class 1A, Lena Winslow, and the super sectional, and both matches at state. That is a pretty remarkable run right there.
Yep. And what do you think is, kind of the thing that's really driven them to be that dominant? Like you said, it's been one of those things where, especially on the Illinois side, if you lose that first set, it's pretty tough. When your back is against the wall, you have to win 2 additional sets to win the match. But it really did kind of seem like after that matchup against Lena Winslow, that one, getting that win was huge, just because Lena Winslow was the number 1 team, but also because once you get that first set win, it seems like you really have the opponent down and just can assert your dominance the rest of the way.
Yeah, in a sense, what happened first off against Lena Winslow was that all of a sudden Lena Winslow started being very tentative and started playing like, oh no, if we lose, we're done. And you know what? They lost and they were done. And that was kind of the case from that point on, really, in the postseason against basically whoever they played. There's obviously, the 2 big hitters, Gracie Furlong and Ada Hafel. But the other thing was they got a lot of great play from a lot of people. Basically, it felt like anybody that they brought in contributed, even people who don't have big numbers, stats wise, but they got very, very steady setting from their setter. They had a couple of particular rotations with Leah Heller, their libero serving, and then their server, their setter serving, and of course her name escapes me at the moment, but Merritt, yeah. Those two got up, and all of a sudden you look up and it's 5, 6, 7 points in a row. And they got very good blocking also from Maya McCoy and Nevaeh Hauber, that's, by the way, a junior and a freshman. And Kendra Bauer also, she was a freshman. So they just, everybody pays attention to the two big hitters for obvious reasons, but boy, everybody else played really well also. And it's one thing to try to stop two players, but you can't stop everybody. And, it just felt like everybody who came in did something good for the team.
Yeah, but it seemed like, looking at the Galena community, I had a chance to go down there on Monday for a couple work-related things, but there's certainly a lot of pride in the Galena community after the volleyball team clinched the state title. Talk about the, reaction to the team winning the title. What were some of the things that you heard, or some fun stories about this team as they clinched their first state title?
Well, I ran into a couple of people at our hotel, they're actually, I think they must have been staying at some other hotel. There are actually several different schools that were represented at our hotel for whatever that means. But I was at the pep rally that they had at Galena High School Wednesday afternoon. The whole school district was jammed in there somehow, and I was trying to do the pregame interview afterwards with Dennis Wells, and I'm not sure how much you were able to hear because we kept hearing the band playing up above. So it's funny to say this, that really, I wouldn't say Galena's used to this, but Galena knows how to respond to big moments at state, and this is now the third consecutive season that a Galena girls team has gotten to state. And I have to think that the girls basketball team will be very favored to make a three-peat coming up in 3.5 months. So at least we know where we have dinner when we're in Bloomington coming up at the end of February and early March, if that's how it turns out.
Yep, absolutely. And this has been a fun team to follow, these girls, as you said, they're competitive in multiple sports. They've had a lot of experience, playing in some high level and high stakes, volleyball and basketball games and things like that. It's very cool to see, what the next season has in store with a basketball coming up. I know that you've gotten a call quite a few of those games and matchups, Steve. And let's talk about some of those girls on those team for just a brief moment. Furlong is one that you've mentioned that's pretty consistent and has been a key part in both of those teams. What do you think it is about those girls and those and just the camaraderie of these girls to be competitive in multiple sports?
Well, if you think about it, a lot of, especially with girls' sports, there's a connection between volleyball and basketball. And I can remember way back in the early 90s, Cuba City won the state volleyball title in November. And then 4 months later, they won the state girls basketball title. And it wasn't just that they beat everybody, it was a demolition. It was a demolition machine kind of out there. It was kind of like every day, well, who's going to beat them now? And I wouldn't say that Galena has the swagger that those kinds of Cuba City teams have had over the years, but they just go out there and they just execute. And you have to, I suppose their opponents, kind of feel like at the end, well, we didn't play very well ultimately. Here we are at the biggest stage of all, and we got beaten straight sets. And you kind of figure that really shouldn't happen, but that is precisely what happened. I got to tell you a story also, just to back up a little bit. You had mentioned this. And Dennis Wells told me this at the before the state championship match. Galena lost its first match of the season this year. They got beat by Fulton, who happened to be one of the 3 division winners in the Northwest Upstate Illini Conference. So it's not like it's a criminal thing to lose, but he said, because they were an inexperienced team. They only had 3 seniors on this team. And so he was told by somebody, wow, you're going to have a long season. And he turned to him and he said, yeah, we are going to have a long season because we're going to state. And not only did they end up playing in the last game the last match of the season, but they ended up winning the last match of the season. So I guess that that guy was right. It was a long season, but it was a long season because they played in every match possible in the postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what a fun team to follow. What a fun team that we've gotten to see. And congratulations again to the Galena Pirates winning their first ever volleyball state championship. Thank you, Steve, for the recap and for covering this team throughout their postseason run. And we'll see what the basketball team has in store once we move into the fall sports or the winter sports season, which is, this week. So we'll see how things shake out. So thanks again, Steve. And coming up next, we'll get into our high school football championship games that we have coming up on Thursday, Division 7 and Division 6 state championship games coming up. Blackhawk Warren and Darlington both qualifying for state. Steve will stay with us, as well as Mark Evenstad standing by, and we'll have Josh Wiederholt join in as well to talk about that. The High School Sports Roundup continues after this on YouTube and SoundCloud.
Check out Subs.com. Subs is Southwest Wisconsin's go-to supplement store. Find all your favorite supplement brands at the best prices from local people. Fuel your fitness journey. Subs.com, your go-to supplement store with locations in Fenimore and Dubuque.
This week's highlight reel is presented by Subs.com. After 2nd and 9, under 3 minutes to play first quarter, no score. Blackhawk Warren with the football at the 29-yard line, and a give inside, and the ball carrier gets across the 10, working towards the end zone, gets twisted in, and he is in the end zone for Northland Buildings touchdown.
That's Sefrud, and that was a good job running the football, but a good call on that one. Marty's been carrying the ball the most, and all of a sudden you give it to him.
As we are under minutes to play in the first quarter, it is 4th and 1 at the 33-yard line. 2 backs in the backfield with Maney. Maney going to give inside, and the defense, I believe they make the stop. I don't think he got there.
No, he did not get there.
But it will be 4th and goal for the Warriors. Power T look again. It's Sefrud, Mosley, and Marty from left to right as we see it. Schlem under center, and a give inside, and he is into the end zone for Northland Buildings touchdown. Boy, Wally, about as good of a start as you can ask for Blackhawk Warren, scoring 2 touchdowns on their last 2 possessions after getting excellent field position, capitalizing on the turnover by Reedsville, turnover on downs, and now it'll be Brady Steets, beg your pardon, kicking this off as Reedsville's going to field it on the far side of the field at about the 24-yard line. And this is going to be returned. Ball is loose, and I believe the Warriors recover. They do. Oh my goodness.
But right here is where it becomes important for Blackhawk to be able to get good series on defense.
I mean, he takes a snap on 1st and 10. He gets hit as he throws, passes, bounded up in the air. And is it caught? Are they saying that's a catch?
They're going to give him credit for it.
Oh my goodness, that's a catch at the 29-yard line. Ball was batted in the air, and the receiver on the far side able to bring it in. Blackhawk Warren sideline saying it's incomplete. But what's the call?
They're giving it to
They're
him.
saying that's a catch. Schlem under center. Takes a snap, gives inside, and that is into the end zone for a Northland Buildings touchdown.
And it's on the right side, so I would say it has to be Lane Marty.
1st and 10. Dorchek goes in motion from the left side. As Maney looking to pass near side, ball batted in the air, and this is intercepted by Blackhawk Warren. Eli Schlem making the interception. A Lancaster Dental and Fenimore Smiles turnover, and now the Warriors take over again. at about midfield. The press box starting to shake a little bit. And the three backs in the backfield for Blackhawk Warren again. And Schlem is going to keep it, and he walks in for a Northland Buildings touchdown. As there's two receivers to each side of the formation. Dorchek going in motion from left to right. Maney takes a snap. Maney firing over the middle. Pass is intercepted by Blackhawk Warren. Andrew Figge on the pick again and gets taken down from behind in Reedsville territory at the 41-yard line. What an interception by Andrew Figge. A Lancaster Dental and Fenimore Smiles turnover, and the Warriors are back in business 28-0. And an opportunity to get it into the end zone and potentially put a running clock on the undefeated Reedsville Panthers. Got this, three backs in the backfield on 3rd and goal from the 3-yard line. Schlem takes the snap, gives to Marty. Marty looking for some room. He twists his way in and is in the end zone for a Northland Buildings touchdown. Blackhawk Warren last week avenged their only loss to Potosi Cassville in dominant fashion, 36-0. A late touchdown was the only score allowed, and that knee will seal the deal. Party on South Wayne, party on Warren. The Warriors going back to Camp Randall Stadium in the Division 7 state championship.
4th down and 7. Line of scrimmage. 24-yard line. Pistol formation now for Goebel. Steps back to pass. Throws it near side. He's got a receiver to the 10 to the 5. Touchdown! Darlington Redbirds! Reagan Jackson on the reception on the weak side.
There's the response. What a ball by Braylon Goebel finding Reagan Jackson on the wheel route that they've had success with last week, and there's the response, Shark.
So 1st and 10 for Kewaunee. They have the football at their own 29-yard line to begin this drive, their second drive of the football game. Here's Thomas Stengel turning, giving, and it's going to be Carlson. Lost the football, picked up by the Redbirds. Reagan Jackson has it. 20-yard line for the Darlington Redbirds, and they get the first turnover of the game. 6 minutes to play, first quarter. Darlington 7, Kewaunee 7. Goebel, line of scrimmage, turns, gives, and Chris powers his way into the end zone from the right side. Touchdown, Darlington.
Great.
2 receivers left, 2 receivers right. Single setback. Now Chris going in motion.
He's got Murray one-on-one.
Throwing downfield, near side, and the pass is caught. It is caught.
What a play by Will Murray.
Will Murray stole the ball away from the defender on that play, Thomas Stengel.
That was
Pistol formation for Goebel. Takes the snap, rolling out to his right. Now he'll throw into the end zone. Caught! Touchdown, Darlington!
Maddox Goebel on the reception, 15-yard touchdown. What a drive, what an answer by the Darlington Redbirds.
Second down and goal. At the 1-yard line, they run the football this time to the right side, and they're into the end zone for a touchdown.
Right back to Maddox Goebel. What a way to start the second half from the Redbirds.
3rd and 6 now from the 23-yard line.
No deep safety.
Redbirds
Chris will go back.
Now back to pass. And the pass intercepted by the Redbirds to the 20, to the 15, 10, 5, touchdown! Yeah, they're going to line up in a victory formation because they've got Maddox Goebel. Setback, they snapped the ball, they took the knee, and that's it, man! Darlington has done it! There is a big celebration going on the field as Darlington, with 25 seconds and the clock counting down, and nobody is in the position to stop it. And the final will be Darlington 34, Kewaunee 28.
Looking for a checking account with no monthly requirements or service charge? People's State Bank's People's Checking Account is just what you're looking for. This account includes free debit card, online and mobile banking, bill pay, and much more at no cost to you. You heard that right. No cost to you. We're your local community bank ready to serve you. People's State Bank. Member FDIC.
Back on the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup, presented by Vertical Rays Milwaukee. And it's now time to talk about the 2 state championship football games that we'll have on Queen Bee Radio coming up on Thursday. We will have Blackhawk Warren taking on Edgar in the Division 7 state championship game on Xtreme 107.1 at 10 a.m. And we also have Darlington taking on Stratford in the Division 6 state championship game on 97.7 Country WGLR. And I'm now joined by the broadcast team that will be part of our coverage on Thursday. I'm joined by Mark Evenstad, Josh Wiederholt, and the Galena truther, Steve Prestigard, who's coming off the Galena Volleyball State Championship. But let's start off with that big win for Darlington in Division 6 that Shark and Josh had the privilege of calling. Seemed like it was a really fun matchup between 2 very good programs in Division 6. And for the Darlington Redbirds, they finally break through, get back to the state championship game. And Josh, I'll start off with you because this seemed like one of those games that, you know, Darlington's been at level 4 for so long for the last few years, and they finally found a way to break through. They were down in this matchup, and you know, with you seeing how Darlington played, how did things shake out? What made the difference for Darlington to finally break through?
And all season long, Coach Winkers has said they're a defense first team, and the defense really settled in. But yeah, there was several moments in this game too. It was kind of a wild game where the football gods didn't seem to be in Darlington's favor. Couple fumbles that weren't recovered that went right back to Kewaunee, and then I'll bring it up later, kind of in the summary. So the Kewaunee, all season long, they had a game plan, and that was to give the ball to Owen Carlson. 37 touchdowns on the year, average a touchdown every 5.5 carries, and he scored on Kewaunee's actually very first drive from 55 yards out, and just a wild first half. Darlington responded on their first drive with a passing touchdown from Braylon Goebel to Reagan Jackson for 25 yards. And Darlington, and Shark can attest, kind of were in a dicey situation after giving up the long touchdown on the first drive. And to set up that response touchdown pass, Darlington actually converted on a fake punt for a 35-yard gain to get the first down. And that kind of switched the momentum, and a lot more offense in the first quarter. Darlington converted on a Ty Chris 2-yard touchdown run to go up 14-7. And then Owen Carlson responded from 26 yards out on the next Kewaunee drive to make it 14-14 still in the first quarter. Like I said, the game really did settle down, though. The Darlington defense really settled down. Kewaunee did score to start the second quarter on a 12-yard or a 26-yard touchdown pass to DJ Eccles to make it 21-14 with less than 2 minutes. And then after a nice kick return, Darlington responded with another touchdown pass from Braylon Goebel, this time to Maddox Goebel for a 19-yard touchdown, but the extra point was no good, 21-20, and they looked set up. So that was, as you know, there was 25 seconds left, and Darlington kicked off. So that looked, got the momentum back. We're going to go into halftime. We just scored. We're going to get the ball back on the kickoff. Well, on the ensuing kickoff with about 20 seconds left, one of the craziest plays that I've seen, and especially in a playoff game, Darlington had a plan to kick it away from Carlson the entire game. The Storm player starts returning the ball, gets absolutely lit up by the Darlington player. I believe it was Braylon Goebel. The ball hits the turf, bounces twice, and almost upwards into Owen Carlson's hands, who's waiting to run it 75 yards for a touchdown to make it 28-20 Kewaunee, where they were just up 21-20 and we're going to be kicking off in the second half. Coach Winker said after the game, they deserve this one. They didn't quit. They didn't hang their heads. When you have stuff like that go wrong, it's easy to, it's not happening for us today. But they responded. Maddox Goebel capped off a long drive to start the third quarter on a 2-yard touchdown plunge to make it 26-28. And that was set up by I'd be remiss if I don't mention this. 2 ridiculously acrobatic catches by Will Murray on the night. Like the definition of mossing his defender. I thought Shark and I up in the booth for sure thought it was going to be even an interception. And Will was able to go over the defender and come down with the ball and set up the touchdown. And at this point, the Redbirds defense, been great all year, was even more settled into the game defensively. Owen Carlson finished the game with 34 carries and 223 yards. 103 of those yards were on the Storm's first 2 drives, to kind of explain how much the Darlington defense really settled in. In the fourth quarter, the Storm started out with the ball and held the ball for 10 minutes in the fourth quarter. It was kind of wild. Huge. This was before Brady Long sealed the victory with a 29-yard pick six. Redbirds all night had been playing man coverage to kind of slow down this run game. And Brady Long did a great job reading it. No help over the top all night. Came down with the pick six, and then Will Murray on his second great catch was able to put the 2-point in to make it 34-28. And then Darlington shut down that 10-minute fourth quarter drive. And Coach Winker said after the game, like, I knew our defense was going to do it. They've done it all year, and they shut them down. And with 2 minutes left, they were able to just run out the clock. And it was a wild game. Shark, that was one of the best ones we've called all year.
Yeah, indeed, because we didn't know that how Darlington would respond to a Kewaunee team that was just, you look at every offensive category, and they were just outstanding. Plus a huge offensive line. You just had to wonder, okay, can Darlington stand up against that offensive line? And we found out that they could. And I mentioned that to the Coach Winkers, that you had proven, at least your team had proven, that it really doesn't matter how big they are or how fast they are or how athletic they are or even how many players they have. You see some teams with only 30 players and other teams with 60. Doesn't matter. It's all right there in their heart. And Darlington showed the heart to just keep on coming at the Storm. And when everything was said and done, it was Darlington winning in the state semifinal by a final of 34-28.
Yeah, I want to ask you this, Shark, because you've seen Darlington play in those level 4 games the last couple of years, and you've seen how heartbreaking some of those losses have been. And Josh kind of alluded to this, where there was kind of a dicey part of the game where you're thinking like, oh no, here we go again. Is this where things kind of break through? But it seemed like there's some pretty good resiliency and probably some adjustments coaching wise that Darlington was able to make in the game. And I would imagine that once the clock hit the triple zeros on that scoreboard, that there was probably a lot of relief on the Darlington side, in addition to the celebration that went along with coming away with that level 4 win.
Yeah, the Storm had their share of turnovers. Well, of course, they had 2 critical turnovers. One was a fumble that when they got down right near the red zone, or we call it the green zone, that extinguished a very promising drive for Kewaunee. And then, of course, the big one was the Brady Long interception return for a touchdown. Outside of that, though, they had some other fumbles that could have easily been recovered by Darlington, but they weren't, and that kept their drives alive. And I can understand where Coach Winker is thinking, when are we going to get one of those? We need to get one of those. And he didn't get just one, he got 2, and that was huge.
Right, now looking ahead to their Division 6 state championship against Stratford that we'll have at 1 o'clock on 97.7 Country WGLR on Thursday. Shark or Josh, I'll let you decide who goes first, but what do we know about Stratford, and what does Darlington have in store for them coming up on Thursday?
We have 2, just the similarities between these 2 teams are uncanny. Stratford, winner of the Central Wisconsin Conference Large, record 12-1 so far this year, 7-0 in the conference. Darlington, champions of the SWAL, 12-1 record, 7-0 in the conference. Stratford, so Kohler Kilty will be a guy to watch out for. He's first team All-State running back and linebacker. I could go through the stats, but kind of would get long. And Gavin Leonard as well, first team All-State tight end, and Carter Lewick, offensive line honorable mention All-State. Well, you look at Darlington and their defensive guys with their All-State honors. Talon Chris, first team All-State defensive line. Will Murray, honorable mention All-State tight end. Carter Murray, honorable mention All-State D-line, and Reagan Jackson in the linebacker position. It's just the similarities between these two teams are wild. Stratford's only loss was to Edgar in week 2. Darlington's only loss week 2, Prairie du Chien. And both just historically great, huge football teams. Stratford qualified for their 11th trip to Camp Randall. Darlington's on their 13th. So it's just going to be an awesome matchup. And Stratford plays low. They're a good physical team, but that's Darlington's forte. And they've showed that they can go against much bigger teams using their strength and speed. So yeah, it's going to be a great matchup.
Yeah, and Josh, Stratford and Darlington did play once before, but it wasn't in the postseason. It was during a regular season game, and it was with Alex Erickson at quarterback for Darlington, and the clock was getting down towards 0. The Redbirds were getting down to the goal line. What they had in mind was they were going to kick a winning field goal to seal the game, and I think it was like on 3rd down. I was not there, but Erickson just took the snap of the football and positioned it, or was attempting to position it in such a way where you could try a chip shot field goal. Well, I guess on the play in which he was lining it up, Stratford said he fumbled. And of course, you can't use video replay in high school. Officials said no, his knee was down. The ball came loose after he was down. So the Redbirds maintained possession on the next play. They kicked a short field goal and won against Stratford. So that was just a great thing to match that game up at that point of a season. Two just powerhouse programs getting together for a Friday. It was a Friday afternoon, and they made it all happen that day.
Definitely, and we're used to seeing that. How many times, like, somebody before the season says, "Hey, I'll give you even money that Stratford or Darlington make it to the state championship." Like, yep, you take that bet, because they're every year they're here, and hopefully this year, and I firmly believe this is the year that Darlington brings the gold ball back.
It's been almost 30 years since they have done that. And, you know, when you say Darlington football in the state of Wisconsin, probably the first thing that comes to mind is numerous state championships. And you would be correct in thinking that way. But they haven't won one since 1995. That's when they destroyed Hurley 63-6. And they've made other state tournament appearances, mostly with Fond du Lac St. Mary Springs, but they've come away empty-handed in those. I think the closest games that they competed with the Springs, I think it was 37-28. They lost in the state championship game. That was when the temperature was 17 degrees at game time. And then a game against Eau Claire Regis, where they just seemed a little bit flat that day after beating Fond du Lac St. Mary Springs in the semifinal. And then there was another semifinal in which the final score was 39-20, and the game was tied 20-20 on a Hunter Johnson touchdown run, but he injured his leg on that run, and he wasn't heard from the rest of the day. And also Darlington's quarterback and another running back, they both went down that day. So you had over 3,000 yards of positive yardage that was sitting on the bench for the fourth quarter. So yeah, for that one, it wasn't a fair fight for Darlington in that fourth quarter of that loss to Springs, 39-20.
Final thoughts for me. It was awesome Friday night seeing. We knew Darlington could do it all year, but Braylon Goebel threw some nice balls, and seeing the passing attack from the Redbirds is going to be huge. What we're going to see from Stratford, maybe even a little bit smaller than this Darlington team up front. But yeah, they're, like I alluded to earlier, they're physical. Stratford, not a pass first team by any means. They'll run a lot of pulling linemen, but they'll run a lot of pulling linemen on counters, but they'll also pull their backside guard on the inside zone. he's not trapping anyone. So it's going to be really up to players like Ross Chris and Reagan Jackson to get penetration to stop those pulling guards. And we've seen them do that all year. Saw him do it against Lancaster. We saw him do it against Mineral Point. So, yep, it's going to be an awesome game.
You have two powerhouse programs going at it for the Division VI crown. That'll be on Thursday at 1 o'clock. Raleigh Cheese pregame after 12:30 on 97.7 Country WGLR. Let's talk about the other state championship game that we have. That'll be before the Division VI matchup. The Division VII state championship as Blackhawk Warren will take on Edgar. Wally Trouton and I had the call of Blackhawk Warren's game against Reedsville, where Blackhawk Warren won 36-7, ending the undefeated season for the Reedsville Panthers. And if you paid any attention to the game that Blackhawk Warren had against Potosi Cassville, pretty much copy paste. It was the same exact formula, with the exception of Reedsville getting a touchdown late in the game. It was a 71-yard touchdown pass with 8.5 minutes to go. But yeah, in that first half, I mean, all the momentum really went to Blackhawk Warren's favor. They turned Reedsville away on their second possession at their own 30-yard line, and 2 plays later, Owen Sefrud scores from 29 yards out to put Blackhawk Warren on the board first. They get another turnover off the kickoff, and then it's Lane Marty getting into the end zone for a touchdown. A 2-point conversion by Sefrud makes it 14-0. And then with 1:07 to go in the first half, Lane Marty gets in on a 1-yard touchdown run to make it 20-0. That was the halftime score. And then Blackhawk Warren got the first possession of the third quarter, and they bled out most of the clock in that third quarter. They scored with 5:08 to go in that third quarter, getting a 28-0 lead. And then to start out the fourth, Lane Marty plunges it in from 3 yards out to make it 36-0. And we had a running clock the rest of the way. So an outstanding defensive performance. We talked about the rush defense that Blackhawk Warren had against Potosi Cassville, completely neutralizing that attack against Reedsville. So they run a lot through their quarterback, Parker Meany, who had over 2,000 yards rushing on the season and 28 rushing touchdowns. Between Parker Meany and their running back, Edgar Stren, they were held to just 16 carries for 48 yards. I mean, that is an outstanding defensive performance. Parker Meany passing on the night, 5 of 9 for 102 yards. He had that one late touchdown pass, but there were also 2 interceptions that were thrown in that one. Blackhawk Warren, got a number of turnovers, whether that was through the air. There were a couple fumble recoveries on kickoffs as well that kept the momentum on their side. And it also kind of felt like that their offense was also a key contributor to that defensive performance, where they were able to just sit on the football, bleed out the clock, and completely, eliminate any of that offensive threat that Reedsville would have had during that game. Just some of the rushing stats: Lane Marty, 32 carries for 141 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. Owen Sefrud got 133 yards rushing on 16 carries, had that one rushing touchdown as well. 1 reception each for Pearson Mahoney and Owen Sefrud. But, again, it's just, there's nothing really flashy about Blackhawk Warren, which is, kind of the weird part about this. You kind of think that, most teams, you get to this level, there's, 1 or 2, key, playmakers that, kind of factor into it, but it's really just a combination of the line doing its job very well, and that, they play, I don't want to say they play safe, but they're very efficient with the way that they run. They're, more of a body blows, type of team. They're not, looking to use a lot of flash to get their offense going. Steve, you were on the call for their only loss of the season against Potosi Cassville, and I think really, just seeing how Blackhawk Warren's played since then, I mean, they have really shut teams down and have made a strong impression for a team that, has really had a lot of question marks coming into the season. When you lose 3 1,000-yard rushers, who's going to step up? And lo and behold, they're playing in the state title game.
Well, yeah, and the thing about playing Blackhawk Warren, it certainly has been the case the last couple of weeks. You got to be ahead of them, because if you are behind them, you might not see the ball. and possibly if you're within a touchdown, you might not see the ball either. And there's a story about that. This is actually the third time that Blackhawk and Edgar are going to face each other at state. Back in the 2018 season, which was the last season that Blackhawk was a football team on its own. They ended up at Camp Randall against Edgar, and they were down actually by, I believe, 2 scores in the first half, came back. And then in the third quarter, they embarked on a 10-minute long scoring drive. That was basically just 2 plays. The whole play. I do not remember how many plays it was, but Edgar couldn't stop it. It wasn't like there wasn't one big run during the whole thing, but it was like 5 yards carry, 6 yards, and there were a couple of 4th down conversions in it. And then you look up 10 minutes later, and they finally scored. And not only did Edgar not be able to come back after that, but they hardly had any time to come back after that. So that's the thing with playing Blackhawk Warren. I think if you get up more than 1 score on them, then you can, maybe get them out of their game somewhat. That I think was what happened against Potosi Cassville the first time that they played. That Potosi Cassville really controlled the line of scrimmage, and I think at one point it was 24-0, and that's not something that Blackhawk Warren is kind of designed to come back from. However, if Blackhawk Warren gets the lead on you and they can just grind it out, you got problems if that's the case. And Edgar certainly found that out. And there's also a story about that game that is tied to the wonders of the internet. So in 2018, Edgar played Stratford near the end of the season and beat Stratford. And of course, Edgar and Stratford is one of the longest rivalries in football in the state of Wisconsin. Jerry Sins, who was the Edgar coach at the time, was quoted in whatever newspaper covered the story that said, "We will not play a more physical game than this game all season." Well, thanks to the joys of the internet, that word got down to Blackhawk, which, as you know, is very proud of playing physical football. And it may have been mentioned to the players that this is what the Edgar coach said. And well, Edgar found out that they may have been mistaken on that statement about playing a physical team. And that's how Blackhawk ended up winning its last football game, beating Edgar in the 2018 state championship.
Yep, as we mentioned in our post-game show, talking with Coach Desi Braden, that this matchup with Edgar, we've seen this movie before. We've seen it a couple times, and he said that this is basically Rocky 3 for them to try and come away with another win. They did beat Edgar in the 2 previous matchups, and Jerry Sins is still the head coach at Edgar as well. And just looking at Edgar, I'm looking at these scores. We talked about, Platteville being a shutout city during the regular season. They're, of the 12 games that Edgar has played, they have shutouts in 9 of them. And the most recent game against Bangor in level 4, they won 21-3. The game before that at Boyceville, Edgar won 52-26. And then the previous 9 games after that, it was actually 9 shutouts in a row that they had during that stretch. So this is a very well-rounded and obviously very defensively sound football team, but it's also one of those things where, I don't know if we necessarily want to say that Blackhawk Warrens exceeded expectations, because they just seem to show up, do their thing, and they're as physical as any team, in this area. I think as far as what Blackhawk Warren has to do against Edgar, I think it's just they have to play their game. If they play at their pace and do what they need to do, and like you said, Steve, if they get ahead, stay ahead. Do that and pretty much just sit on the football and to steal a phrase from our friend Tom Nisus, make it death by 1,000 cuts. Be that body blows type of thing. You're not going to really get those explosive runs against a defense like this. So do what you need to do to neutralize the offensive side of the ball, keep it as low scoring of a game as you can. And if it's just comes down to trench warfare, you think it's going to be in your advantage because of the physicality that you bring to the matchup.
Right. And or to paraphrase what Tom said, more like death by 1,000 punches, basically. And that was actually what happened in 2019. It was the first Blackhawk Warren trip to state. And I think Shark and I, both remember this. There was only one touchdown in the football game. And that was, of all things for Blackhawk Warren, a touchdown pass to, of all people, Caden Mills right at the end of the first half. And I think Shark probably remembers that was kind of a rainbow pass that just missed the fingertips of the Edgar defender. And if he had been like a half-inch taller, it would have been a pick six the other way. But instead, Mills made the catch, ran into the end zone, and scored the only touchdown of the game in the 6-0 win. And of course, everybody knows this. Caden Mills is one of Coach Corey Mills' sons. And Sharp remembers this also, I'm sure, the post-game interview where Corey basically confirmed whatever he thought was the case, was that was his last game coaching. But both for Caden and for Corey, what a way to go out. And I'm sure Corey is happy that the tradition has certainly continued at Blackhawk Warren since his retirement.
Yep, certainly. And we kind of talked about this, a couple of weeks ago, as far as, legacy games and, putting your own stamp on those programs, in addition to, Travis Winker's trying to do his thing with Darlington, Desi Braden very much trying to do the same thing with Blackhawk Warren, because, it's one thing to, follow a historically good coach. It's another to maintain, that tradition. And, for, Desi Braden, I think, it's hard to say it, but it's almost kind of under the radar as far as, what he's been able to do and what he's, accomplished with Blackhawk Warren. Granted, it's the first trip back to state, since that 2019 season, but he's gotten his teams to level 3 or higher over, the duration of his time as the head football coach, with the exception of that weird, 2020 COVID season, because there was no postseason to play for when they went to the alternate spring season. But at any rate, I mean, he's been able to keep that tradition alive. That team has been very competitive. They're, a contender, not just in the conference. And, I'm pretty sure that if you told Blackhawk Warren, if you didn't win the conference title, but you've brought home the gold trophy, you'd happily, take that and, be able to, put that in your trophy case and, keep that alive. So
there is one difference. It should be, there's a difference. And there's also one of those asterisk things, because according to the WIA, of course, Blackhawk Warren and Potosi Cassville tied for the title, because the WIA does count. The conference doesn't count the crossover games. So I guess if you want to put an asterisk there, but there is also one kind of interesting thing that just kind of popped up in my head between the difference between Darlington with Travis Winkers and Blackhawk Warren with Desi Braden, both relatively new coaches there. I don't feel like Desi really changed a whole lot when he took over as the coach. They've been a beer team since what did he tell me? Like about 20 years, basically, in the case of Blackhawk and then Blackhawk Warren. And that hasn't really changed. There are always refinements, because there's always refinements from one year to the next. But, to me, at least, the Blackhawk Warren teams with Desi as the coach look very similar to the Blackhawk Warren teams with Corey Mills as the coach. The difference with Darlington is that what was Darlington known for years and years and years and years? And it was running the wing T. But Travis Winkers came in and he brought the flex bone, or as I call it, the hope bone, because it's basically the Lancaster offense. And that was a transition to go from the usual, wing T with a wing back on the right and the split end on the left side, or vice versa. And, all of these guys going all over the place, to running the going between the wishbone and the 4 wide option, the spread option look. So that's a difference between the two of them. But here they are at state, so obviously it's worked. Whether whether a coach just said, I'm going to bring in my offense here, or another coach said, this works really well, I'm not touching this.
Right, exactly. And Josh, I'll pose this question to you because it is, these are two very, we'll say unconventional, type of offenses. You don't see them, on Sundays. You see it, maybe occasionally on Saturdays if you're, a diehard college football fan and, watching some of these, lower tier, conferences and stuff like that. But I mean, it keeps working. I mean, it's hard to, deny that the results are there. And, it's, ground and pound, between the tackles, try to bounce it outside, on occasion, but, keeping things, close to the line of scrimmage and going with these, old school looks, it's hard to argue that the results are there. And of course, it's two programs that, run these offenses. They're the ones that are playing for state.
Definitely. And I mean, it really is effective at finding the weak link on your opponent. If you kind of compact and know what you're going to do and do it well, if your opponent has one weak link on the defensive line or middle linebacker, outside linebacker, you're going to be able to expose that fairly quickly, and not even necessarily physically weak link. If your opponent is not fundamentally sound every single play, these offenses are conducive to burning you deep as well. We've seen Darlington lull our defenses asleep 2 weeks in a row and hit the wheel route for big touchdown plays off the play action. And it also helps having the horses up front, like these two offensive lines that are still left. I mean, that's where the game is won. And Darlington and Blackhawk Warren offensive lines are some of the strongest kids that I've seen in quite a while. Their pad level is so low, and yeah, it's fun to watch. And I don't know, it's not for everyone watching these offenses, but it is for me, and I love it.
Yeah, it speaks. Go ahead, Steve.
Josh will be happy to hear this, but I think you have to give credit to the offensive line coaches for these teams, not merely because they've maximized what they have, whether it's big guys or not necessarily big guys, but they've convinced guys. I mean, think of it this way: they've convinced high school players to take a position that gets only credit, that doesn't get really credit that much, but gets a whole lot of blame when somebody gets called for holding, or somebody gets called for false start, or or not being on the line when they need to be, or whatever. You have to be smart, and you have to be very selfless to be an offensive lineman. Now, I can see Josh's head growing here as I'm describing it like this, but I mean, it is really the most thankless position in football. Offensive lineman, oftentimes the only time you hear them is, false start 63 offense or whatever. So whoever's doing the coaching of the offensive lines deserves 10 tons of credit for both of these teams, that they have gotten guys not just to play the position but to buy into what you have to do to be a successful offensive line. And let's be honest about this. Offensive line is the most important position group in any football team, regardless of what kind of offense you're running, and regardless of who the quarterback and the receivers and the running backs are. Because if you have a good line, you're going to give people holes to run through, and you're going to give quarterbacks time to throw. If you don't have a good offensive line, neither of those is going to happen.
Yep, agreed. And it's just one of those things. Like I think about how these offenses are set up and the type of schemes that they run. Like I think about like when I was as a kid throwing the football in the backyard. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna play quarterback. I'm gonna throw for like 5,000 yards and stuff like that. But really, it's when you're the quarterback of these teams. It's, oh yeah, I'm gonna hand it off to this back, or it's gonna be a quarterback option type thing, and it might not be something that some of these skill position players might not be thinking about, or kind of envisioned getting there. But if you're holding the championship trophy at the end of all of it, I think it's all certainly worth it, and give credit to the entire coaching staffs for really trying to put in systems that again, maybe not the most conventional, or maybe something that kids might not desire to have. But I think winning is something that a lot of kids certainly enjoy doing more. And if if you have the personnel to to run it, and maybe that's part of that equation too, where maybe you don't have someone that has the strongest arm to throw the football and stuff like that. You have to do something to make that work. And give credit to these coaching staffs for establishing those offensive schemes and being able to run them effectively against some really different looking defenses and stuff like that, as well as this postseason has gone along. And this is going to be our final episode of the fall sports postseason. We'll have some additional coverage after the state championship games are done. We'll have some interviews and stuff like that on our Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. But I'll kind of go one by one. I'll start with you, Josh. Obviously the championship games have yet to be played, but when you reflect on how this season has gone, what are kind of the things that stand out to you as far as how things have shaken out? What were kind of the top stories in your mind when you reflect on the 2023 season?
It's a long season, but I mean, there's the Platteville storyline. We're the Platteville truthers, but it was kind of the cream rising to the crop, I guess you'd kind of say, with our traditional football powerhouses in the area. Lancaster made a deep run. They ended up playing Darlington. Darlington makes a deep run. Traditional powerhouse. Blackhawk Warren, traditional powerhouse. Potosi Castle. I mean, all these great teams we got to see. Mineral Point looked very good at the end of the year, as did River Ridge. So, yeah, it was just a pleasure to kind of see some of these traditional powerhouses play the way they did. And, we had up-and-comers too. So, yeah, it's just really awesome football in the area in general. And I think our area teams in the playoffs have shown that this part of the state is not properly rated to underrated. Because, I mean, except for playing the teams from up north, the teams from this area have done great in the playoffs.
Absolutely. Steve, you're the fan club or the club leader of the Platteville Truther Club. So what are the things that you're going to reflect on this 2023 season?
Well, Platteville's kind of out of nowhere success is obviously one of them. And the fact that they really don't have that many seniors graduating indicates that I really don't think this is a one-year thing. The challenge that the Hillmen are going to have next year, of course, is that nobody's going to they're not going to sneak up on anybody. It's Platteville, they've been very good for a long time. Oops, but they have TJ Pink back at quarterback. They have Tyler Sass back at running back. They have several receivers who are back. And they have, I think, 3 offensive line starters who are back. And we just talked about how important that is. Most of their defense is going to be back. So I certainly think that they're built for the long haul. And as we've talked about this repeatedly, about how Bryce Arneson really changed the culture in Platteville to, much higher expectations for how you play, but also how you conduct yourself and so on. And so that was just really fun to watch this season. The other thing I would point out, I guess, and this just popped in my head also, is, Darlington's at state, but they're not undefeated. Blackhawk Warren's at state, but they're not undefeated. Each of those teams had losses early in the season. Platteville, of course, they got beat by Darlington in their first game and really turned things around from week 1 to week 2. Darlington got beat by Prairie du Chien, and I'm not sure they had to turn things around that much. But obviously that kind of got everybody's attention. And then the postseason, or then the conference season started, they started pounding people. Blackhawk Warren, they got beat at home for homecoming by Potosi Castle. And well, we saw what happened with them the rest of the season. So usually you look and you think that, well, it's an undefeated team that gets to state. But the reality of it actually is that it's not necessarily, one loss is going to put you a little bit behind the 8 ball Blackhawk Warren, because of their one loss, ended up a number 3 seed, so they had to win 2 road playoff games. But at the same time, you have to come back from a loss, and your season is not over because of your first loss. And I think Darlington and Blackhawk Warren are excellent examples of that.
Yep, agreed. And then Shark, your takeaway from the 2023 season, what stood out to you the most?
Well, I did mostly Lancaster games and Cuba City games, part of a trade-off to account for people's schedules. With Lancaster, to me, what really stood out was the fact that Lancaster had graduated an outstanding running quarterback in Jacob Dieball from the previous year. Dieball was just an absolute specimen. Big-chested, fast, hard runner. He was the catalyst for the Lancaster offense. Now, that was last year. Now you're wondering, all right, who is going to take over at quarterback and who is going to succeed at quarterback? Well, they found Nolan Wolf, and a completely different type player. He has the ability to run, but he's not known as a running quarterback. But, he had great running back play with Peyton Alvarado, who just gouged offensive lines night in and night out. A couple of good receivers, and Taylor Williams, and also Logan Wolf. That offense for Lancaster really didn't miss a beat. It was just done a little bit differently is how they got it done, and got all the way to level 3 before they got beat by Darlington. Now, the other team I want to talk about just briefly, they didn't go quite as far, but Cuba City, they seem to have a really good offensive attack and solid defenders. Cuba City, I was told right at the very beginning of the season by none other than former coach Jim Mextroff. We had a nice chat at the Pioneer Stadium during a Badger football practice, and he said, we're getting there. We're getting there, and we're slowly making that work. He goes, but we're about a year away. So he was pretty right on about Cuba City. They made just a few too many mistakes to sustain leads, and I'd be watching out for that Cuba City team in 2024. I think they're going to be a team that will challenge for the SWAL Conference title.
Yep, and the thing that stands out to me about 2023 is, and I don't know if it's just because we started doing this show and it kind of forced us to really pay closer attention to all of the area games that we have, not just the ones that we have on the air, but how many good matchups were there throughout the season? How many of these football games that came down to one possession or one play and things like that, and then just kind of talking about it throughout the postseason, where especially the 2 games that we mentioned between Prairie du Chien and Darlington and Lancaster and Platteville. A 2-point conversion in either one of those games or both changes the entire complexion of how the playoff picture turns out, how conference titles are determined, and things like that. And just how incredibly lucky we have been to be able to see and document most of those football games throughout the season. I mean, I don't want to be the what if type guy, but just one of those, how different could things have been, had, the ball, spun a different way in one of those games, or, you look back on, some of the other matchups like the, Blackhawk Warren game against River Ridge, where Blackhawk Warren escaped, with a 14-6 win. River Ridge felt like that they had, Blackhawk Warren on the ropes. And, when you're, River Ridge or Potosi Castle, you're looking at Blackhawk Warren, you're thinking, how close were we to beating, or, for Potosi Castle, you can say we beat the state champ, potentially, assuming, if Blackhawk Warren does win the game. So it's just incredible how awesome this season has been, and just seeing how teams got better throughout the season, and seeing players have to step up and fill in roles for different injuries, or had to fill in on production spots that were lost to graduation. And I think that even as the state championship games are played on Thursday, I think a lot of the coaches around here are already starting to look ahead and kind of think what's our next move, what are the things that that we have to do to get things going. And yeah, what an awesome 2023 football season we've had, and we're excited to cap things off on Thursday with 2 state championship games on Queen Bee Radio. Again, we'll start off with the Division 7 state championship game at 10 a.m. on Xtreme 107.1, Blackhawk Warren taking on Edgar. And then at 1 o'clock on 97.7 Country WGLR, Darlington taking on Stratford. And that will end our fall high school sports postseason coverage. And it's on to winter sports. And as we mentioned earlier, next week there will be no high school sports roundup due to the Thanksgiving holiday. So in 2 weeks on November 30th, our next episode, and we will preview girls basketball, boys basketball, and high school wrestling, and document some of the outcomes of these early high school basketball and wrestling meets. We'll talk all about that in a couple weeks on our next episode of the High School Sports Roundup. Thank you to Shark, Josh, and Steve for joining me on this week's episode, and we'll see you again in a couple weeks for the winter sports start on the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup presented by Vertical Raise Milwaukee.